So now we're going to do something a wee bit different, and you have to stick with me on this, especially if you're completely alien to it. Just bear with me. Have an open mind here. So we're going to stop looking at the business and we're going to start looking at the person running it. So it's called the founder operating system, and it's something we already look at during our 30-day review and reset, and even in the weekly check-ins where we do the mood, energy, and performance. Because everything we do in here is founder focused. Because you are the running everything. You know, you are the captain of the ship, or whatever you want to call it. Everything that you're trying to build, unfortunately, yes, you are at the foundation of as well. So if you're off, then the business is off. You know, if you're off, then the team is off. So the founder and how you show up is very, very important, obviously. So operationally, in the decisions that you make, the work that you avoid, like we talked about that here, there's certain conversations that we're avoiding. Again, that all comes down to you. I say to everybody, even my kids, everything you do and everything happens to you is your fault. You have to figure it out. Okay, so this is the founder operating system. It comes before everything else. So before, I had this conversation with somebody else in here, before looking for an external thing, you need to look internally first. So nothing external is going to fix an internal problem. There's nothing more internal than the person who's actually at the head of the business, which is you. So each and every person down here, not marketing, not sales, not whatever. You need to look inside first and see what you could do differently. Because everything downstream is an impact of how you're showing up. So the founder operator system is crucial. So how clear you are, how regulated you are, how much energy you have. So for the next while here, for this next section, hopefully we can get it done in about 45 minutes before doing the Q3 planning. But it's all going to be very personal. It's going to be about you, not about the business. So if we're thinking of ideas and you're looking at the answers going business, 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 you need to try and bring it in personal. And I'll be honest, this is one of the toughest parts of personal and business growth that I ever faced. Started working on these kind of things in about 2018. And it was one of the most difficult things because every time someone asks you any question, you always relate it back to business, every single time. But we're trying to look deeper here and think about the founder. We're trying to think about the person who's driving things. So I want to start with a question, and I want you to actually sit with it. I want you to actually, not just nod along. And it might seem a wee bit far-fetched of what I'm saying here, but the reason why it says this, if you watched your life like a movie, what would you tell yourself, okay? And it's not just a gimmick that I'm talking about here, I'm being serious. So if you could look at your life from the outside looking in, so this is why it's always easier for me to identify things in your business that you can't, because I'm from the outside looking in. It's easier from the outside to look in because you're looking at things from a different angle. You can see all perspectives. But when you're stuck in the weeds and you're stuck in the day-to-day or in the grind or whatever you want to call it, it's really, really difficult to see anything that's going on, really. So I want to ask everybody or challenge everybody, if you were sitting at home watching Netflix or sitting in the cinema watching yourself in a film, watching this person run the business, run the family, see how you're showing up every day, what advice would you give yourself? Like, what would you be shouting at the screen? Or you can flip it another way, second version. If this was somebody you loved, if this was your son, your brother, your father, whoever, what advice would you give them with what you're currently going through? What would you be saying? Like, fuck's sake, like, make the hire the guy. Stop, grinding yourself into a hole every month, week on week, working yourself to the bone, working silly hours or whatever it may be. Like, what advice would you give yourself? Avoiding conversations. The questions you guys are asking me, I'm not being, like, it might sound silly, but you could ask yourself the same question. Sit and think about the question. That's why I always say when you've got a problem during the onboarding videos, it's like when you've got a problem, clearly articulate what the problem is. Then look at what you've tried to do to fix it before presenting it, because 9 times out of 10, when you look at it in that way, you will actually identify it yourself and you'll see it differently. It might land differently for some people, but I want to challenge you. So either looking at yourself on screen or looking at somebody or giving somebody advice to somebody close to you or somebody you love, what would you tell them with your current situation? Tell them to stop undercharging, working yourselves into the ground, make a decision you already know you should be making. Because most of you know, again, Keith came up to me there in the break with a question or that he already knew the answer to, and it wasn't until I said it, he went, yeah, do you know what, you're right. But these things can be clearly seen from the outside. It's easier for me to spot these issues or challenges than it is to do it yourself. So what I'm trying to get you to do is to kind of build that toolbox or tool chest to be able to do this as well and have, again, raise that level of awareness. Something I talk about in here massively is that level of awareness. I'm going to be talking about it the whole way through this whole sort of section here. We want to look at the gap that you tell yourself from the outside and what you're actually doing on the inside. And that gap is what we're going to work on here together. So if the founder is off, the business is off. This is the core law that needs to be said out loud, because everything here hangs off it. If the founder is off, the business is off. And I don't mean that in a soft, motivational way, I mean in operational. So emotional instability leads to poor decisions. I always say in here, take the emotion out of it. And again, I use that example of Keith. I says, how you approach every situation completely dictates how it's going to go. I had the same conversation with you, Graham, about a tough customer. How you approach a situation, again, so you could say that the client's a dickhead, something happened, he's a wanker, he reacted like this. But how did you present the problem? How did you show up to it? Did you come in? How did you show up that day? How did you treat the customer? How did you come home that evening to the family? How you're showing up actually matters, and you could blame everything else going on around you. But you make a panic call on a price. You're scrambling for work, you're bringing in the emotion into it, a hire, a project, whatever it may be. Because if you were stressed and you made that decision, it more or less and more likely wasn't the right decision to make. And I know this is difficult, but this is what we're trying to get everybody in here to achieve. So we probably saw that in your what didn't go to plan list. Okay, I want to talk about vision as well, but no vision. We're going to talk about the 3 metrics of the founder here. But no vision leads to quitting the moment any friction appears. So that's what not having vision does. The first real bit of resistance and the energy to keep going just isn't there. So low energy, again, leads to weak execution. Even a brilliant strategy, the best plan, I could put the best plan in front of you guys, and if you don't show up, if you don't turn up and do the work, if you're not eager for it, if you're take it or leave it, then it's not going to happen. It could fall apart. Same as if you're running on empty. If you're draining yourself of energy and you're running on empty, your ability to make decisions outside of your strength are going to hinder. So the business doesn't rise beyond your internal, so like your internal operational system. So I always say the business sometimes can be to whatever your capacity is. Without those systems, without those processes, without those things in place, the business can only go to your capacity. But even if you have the best systems and process and plan in place, still, if you're at capacity, that's it, that's your ceiling. So your clarity is the ceiling, your regulation is the ceiling, your energy is your ceiling for your business. It will not perform if you're not showing up right. When the results stall, that's what I want to get you to think about. When the results stall, and some of the numbers there we looked at in the 5 metrics, the first place shouldn't be looking at your marketing, shouldn't be looking at your sales, it shouldn't be looking at your team. You need to first of all look inside and see what's going on here and how you're showing up and what you're doing. How are you spending your time? Is it that founder or is it that operator? Have you been neglecting X, Y, and Z? The answer is probably yes. You need to fix those issues first, because there is no external problem or shiny object that you'll find outside of the business is going to fix a problem internally. The internal needs to be fixed first from the core. So there's 3 non-negotiables that make that up. There's 3 pillars. But first of all, we'll do that growth driver. Okay, we'll do this first question here, growth driver number 1, the founder operating system. So if you were watching your life like a movie, what advice would you give yourself? If it was your son, daughter, somebody you loved running the business, what would you tell them? So write down what you tell that person on the screen or that person that you love, and I want you just to be honest about it. Would you push harder? Would you pull back? Would you finally, listen, take part, hire, fire, do whatever? What's already screaming in the face that and if it's nothing, then you need to think deeper about this, because there is bound to be something. We've all sat there watching something, and you're screaming at the TV, like even a horror film, like, fuck me, he's behind you. How do you not know? Same thing, lads and ladies. So we're going to look at the 3 pillars or the 3 non-negotiables. We talk about non-negotiables in here, but get these right and everything downstream, including those 5 metrics that we talked about, gets easier. Get them wrong. Get this wrong. And again, you might look at this or be listening to what I'm saying and thinking, this is fucking way over what I'm all about here. Just sit with it for a minute. Give me, just have an open mind here, because there's nothing that you will do outside of these 3 things will fix those 3 things. Essentially, that is the core of everything you do and how you're showing up. So the first one's vision. Vision's all about your direction. So that's why if you are familiar with the Genius model, some of you have seen it, some of you haven't, about how the blueprint's made up, time, profit, control, and then the high quality client section is about marketing and vision. The vision is crucial. The vision is your direction. And we're going to get into vision in more detail, but it's a high level of what vision means. Vision means your direction. Self-mastery, that's regulating your emotions. This is something that most people struggle with the most. Having a vision is fine, but being able to regulate your emotions under pressure and the awareness that goes with it. So if anybody's in business, being able to regulate your emotion no matter what goes on, like not getting stressed, not getting overwhelmed, that's self-mastery. No matter what's going on, there could be a million fires burning around you, but if you remain cool, calm, making decisions, you'll get out of those things much quicker than just coming in like a hurricane. And again, that energy, so the last one's energy then, and that's your daily capacity to actually think and lead. So that's like literally your energy, not anything airy-fairy. This is actually your energy. How you show up, again, in your energy affects absolutely everything. So if your energy is low, so will your output be. That's why I often say to guys as well, when you're up working all hours at night, which I'm guilty of myself still at times, even last night, prepare for this, changing everything like I do last minute, that, are you doing your best work at that time? No. The answer is no. Sometimes I look back at stuff that I've done late in the evening, look back the next morning and go, what was I even thinking? So again, that's your energy, and that energy impacts everything. And that's why we do the 30-day review and reset. And again, like I said, we score that mood, energy, and performance. That's why it's absolutely crucial. Because without that, whatever we're talking about after, that's completely pointless. Like, this dictates how this whole section here is here for a reason, and it dictates. You could put the best plans in place for Q3. None of it will happen if you ignore this section. So we're going to take each one of them. I'm going to be straight with you, and then we're going to score yourself honestly on all three. And again, it's not a test. It's a baseline. This is one we've never done before, and this is one, well, we've done it differently. We've never done it like this, but we want to review this every quarter. Okay, so just answer it honestly as you can, and it's the truth of where you're starting from today. Okay, so the most honest, the most raw you can be with yourself, the better. If you need to hide it from the next person next to you, then do it. Some of this work can be tough, and it can expose a lot. Okay, so pillar one then, the vision. And I need to be, clear something up before most people get it wrong. Vision is not goals. Vision is not money. Revenue target's not a vision, right? And goals are pie in the sky if you don't change, again, your attitudes, your behaviors, and everything else. Like, you could write goals to the cows come home. It'll never happen unless you actually do something about it. A target is just a number, and a number on its own won't carry you through anything. It won't keep you going when shit hits the fan, essentially. So real vision is three things. Where the business is actually going. Again, we always ask why in here. Why does this business even exist in the first place? Like, beyond the money. I talked about having a conversation today, or yesterday it was, with somebody who had said about they wanted to do something that their family has never done. They came from sort of poverty and wanted to be the first person to change that. So why are we all in business? Why do we all get into business in the first place? Some of us lose sight of that. It's that do things your own way. It's maybe for the money, but we're going to look beyond the money here. What is it really for? What is it really doing for? To do things your own way. We need to get back to that. We need to remember why we're doing things here. And then how it integrates with your life. Because a business that's winning while your life falls apart is not a vision worth having. That's why, everything we do here, the business is a vehicle to provide you the kind of life you want to live, not the other way around. You can have the most successful business in the world and then turn around and there's nobody there to share it with because you've been buried in the job. It's obvious why it matters so much, but it's brutally true. If the vision is shallow, okay, if your vision isn't strong enough or it's not clear enough, then resistance will kill any momentum you have. So as soon as a problem appears, you will forget about it. So the vision needs to be strong. It needs to be feeling. I know I always say leave the feeling and emotion out of decisions, but you need to have a bit of feeling behind your vision and what and why you're doing it. Because the first sign of friction, then you'll fold. You'll forget about it. And again, money without meaning, it just, it creates that quit energy. So you can still be making good money and have a successful business and still want to walk away. Some of us have probably been there. Because there's nothing underneath it. Nothing. You can't. If you have all the money and no time to go and enjoy it, what is the point? So if there's no real vision, the first sign of, again, friction just dwindles it all away. So vision is the thing, the only thing that will let you actually withstand the resistance. So if you're true to what you're trying to achieve, your vision of where you're trying to go, and you kind of do that at all costs, no matter what the hiccups are, you'll always remain on track. So like we say, it's never that straight path, but as long as, like, same as stocks and shares or anything else, if anybody's familiar with it, it'll go up and down, but as long as it's steady going forward, if that vision's clear enough for where you're going, that'll happen. If it's not, then you'll just be fucking going around in circles. Setting a goal for the next week's not enough. What is the bigger picture here? Why are we doing it? So then we're going to look at why is staying exactly where you are now actually costing you, or what's it actually costing you over the next year? So if you don't change, and again, remember, guys, like, we'll bring it back to this movie, and it may sound cheesy, but like, everybody is the fucking director of their own film. Like, you make the rules. I have this conversation with people all the time. They're pinning themselves up against the wall, but you make the rules. It's your business. You dictate how it works. You dictate how it goes, not anybody else. Yes, you may be at the mercy of a client for a particular deadline, but at the end of the day, you are the creator of this. And again, we take it even broader and talk about life. You get to decide what happens here, not anybody else. It's totally up to yourself. And the quicker you realize that, the better. You know, you don't have to fall into whatever everyone else does. That's the issue with this game, is everyone just follows on from what they've been told by the person before them. That's kind of how we all learned. We learned off our foreman, we learned off the guy we worked for, we learned off our dad or our granddad, and then we just carried things on. You can rewrite that whole fucking script. Doesn't have to be, it can be whatever the fuck you want. You can create your own business, you can not do this, you can do this. Doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. Doesn't matter what a competitor has done before you. You do not have to follow their path. You create your own. So think about it deeper, think about it like that. But the story, obviously, first of all, like, you make up your own story, but the story has to be, first of all, written. So we need to get very clear on what that vision is. And that's what we do in here. We look at that end goal, and we reverse engineer it, and we put the steps in place in order to get there. That's the only thing I can't do for anybody in here, is give them that vision. And I know that can sound a bit fluffy, but you need to bear with me, because it's real work that needs to be done. And it's a legitimate way to look at things, because it puts the whole thing into a completely different perspective from what you've probably looked at before. We need to start looking at it differently. So you're not just drifting through life, you're actually making your way through it and actually making progress. So where most founders get vision badly wrong, and it's the opportunity cost. You know, most of you judge it by looking only at today, only looking so far. And what's it going to cost me right now to make this change? You know, to hire, you know, raise my prices. We're always looking at that short-term thing, like even in construction. The biggest example I could pick for this about not looking beyond the initial decision or looking at every decision in a short-sighted way is making a hire. People always struggle with that first hire, bringing somebody in to kind of replace them, or even, you know, you never replace yourself 100%, but even at a 60 to 70% capacity, bringing somebody in to fill that void. People often think or look at that decision based on the current revenue the business is generating. Can I afford to take somebody on? But you have to look at the opportunity cost. That's the real cost. That when you make that hire, what will that do for your business? What will that enable you to go and then do and bring in more revenue? Look at things in the business that actually need to be fixed. Again, that founder work. So making that hire is not just about, can I afford that now? It's what that's going to bring once you put that person in place, and then you can step back to go and actually, you know, generate more revenue, go and meet more clients, go and have those conversations you don't have the opportunity to. For some of the smaller guys, it could be just can't even get near pricing a job because you're just completely swamped. You know, you might think straight away, geez, that's a big cost. That's a big cost to bring that guy in. But that, again, that's that short-term thinking. You're not looking at the bigger vision here. Bringing that person in enables you to then go and do X. That's how you need to be looking at these decisions in business, looking at it through a wider lens. So we could go on and on here about examples, but it's kind of that pretty much sums it up. And that vision is what gives you the belief, like I say. Without it, again, you get panic decisions, you get doubt. And look, everybody will have this, regardless of how clear your vision is. Sometimes the vision can change, but if there's not one really there at all and you're only looking at week by week, don't expect anything to actually happen. Nothing real or meaningful anyway. You need to have that vision crystal clear. And that's what all the mindset stuff, the concrete mindset section in your business plans, that's why it's all at the beginning. That's not just by chance or whatever something has happened. That's there for a reason, because without that vision, without getting rid of all these limiting beliefs and other things or what's possible and actually thinking about things differently, the rest of it doesn't matter. But people can be guilty of wanting to come in and you know, shortcut straight to the tracking and the different things. And while they're all important, like I say, without that vision in place, none of it's ever going to actually happen. Or the first sign of something going wrong, you'll stop doing it anyway. So the vision is actually crucially important. So the first bit of work there, open up the workbook there, Pillar 1, vision. So 3 questions. Where is the business actually going? Do you truly know? So do you have a vision for the business? Why does the business exist beyond the money? What is it for? And what is staying exactly where you are right now actually costing you? So what is the opportunity cost of staying where you are over the next year by doing nothing about it? So the identity statement's at the bottom. So if you said this statement out loud, like, I know exactly what I want and how I'm going to get there, would you score 1, which is weak, or a 5, which is yes, I know exactly where I'm going, how I'm going to get there? So score yourself honestly on that one. If you're still writing, just keep going, okay? There's no rush. Again, I'm going to talk again for another while. So Pillar 2 is self-mastery. And this is the one, you know, the hardest one probably for most people in the room, and the one nobody likes to admit that they struggle with. So self-mastery is the ability to regulate yourself. It's, again, discipline, but also more so the ability to regulate yourself under pressure. So we talk about pretty much how quickly it takes to rebuild yourself after something happens, or how you deal with that situation. So after a fear, a stress, a setback, something traumatic, whatever it may be, it's how you bounce back. It's how you, not just take those problems, how you deal with those issues, but how you then rebuild yourself after it happens. That's the self-mastery. So it's like about resilience almost. And it's about, how you can still make a decision even though it scares you, even though you're not quite sure of what the outcome is. That's self-mastery. Doing the uncomfortable things, that's doing them anyway, even if they feel majorly uncomfortable. But again, some of you have it, or everybody in this room has it in them to some degree. This is something that can be, trust me, this is something that is learned. This is something that if you don't have, you learn it. You gain it over time by, that self-work. But everybody in here made a decision without anything tangible. You invested something, you showed up, and again, that was all down to you guys, so it was very unknown, but you've done it anyway, so that exists in every person in this room. Self-mastery is important for different reasons, and it comes up in different ways. Fear is one of them. Fear makes everything harder, full stop. It makes decisions harder. It makes your marketing harder. You're not sure, fear of how you're going to be portrayed online, or whatever it may be. It makes selling harder. Meeting those clients, doing those things, taking on these bigger projects, whatever it may be, raising your prices, that's all, that fear, that limiting belief. It makes winning the work harder. It makes having the conversations with team and clients or me harder. Fear of what might happen as a result of that. Most people don't fear or feel because they don't know what to do. Most people feel because of uncertainty or external pressures hijack the decision making. So most people don't do the thing, even though what you should do and what you do, again, are two totally different things. And that's why we talked about looking at yourself from the outside, looking in on that movie, or somebody you loved in the same scenario, what advice would you give them? Because even though we know something's screaming at us, and even back at that other section where you meant did the problems just happen? Did they appear? Could you see them coming? Because failure sometimes is inevitable because of our lack of vision, or because of our lack of self-belief, or because of our lack of, or because of the amount of fear, or procrastination. Procrastination and comfort are also huge here, and massive part of self-mastery, but it all comes back to awareness. Having the awareness is the key to self-mastery. So catching yourself on, as we'd say here in Belfast, for anybody who's unfamiliar with our lingo, if you catch yourself on, when you're doing something or going through the motions, it's easy to catch yourself on and realize, fuck, I'm doing it again. I've just liced out at Demons. I've just went into the site and fucking kicked them all out of the way and took over. Hung up on the client or whatever else. Again, having that awareness of your behavior, how you're showing up, is all down to self-mastery. So you can almost, sounds crazy, but having that conversation with yourself and catching yourself on before it happens. So then there's comfort as well, and comfort has hit a few people in here. Okay, getting comfortable when things are going well is another one. Being consistent is probably the key to everything. Making big grand gestures will have short-term gains, but over the long term, it's consistency. It's small, impactful things or small actions over time that make the biggest impact. And when we're getting comfortable, everything's going well, it's easy to get comfortable and then start neglecting certain things. So you should be always striving. It's not as if you're looking at things from a place of lack or not having, or nothing's ever good enough, or always wanting more. But you should always be at least reviewing things and making sure that things are going the right way, or even in improving certain aspects of it. So if things are going well financially, that's not the measure of success. Neither is how busy you are. Again, it could be how much time you're spending in the business. There's always improvements. There's always growth and always improvements. Even how you're showing up as a leader, whatever it may be. So even when things seemingly in the business are going well, again, that doesn't mean that life in general is going well. So getting comfortable is a dangerous place, and if you're not actually going forward and you think you're maintaining, you're actually going backwards, because the whole rest of the world is moving on without you. Things always need to be progressing, and again, just be careful of what I'm saying there. I'm not saying that from a place of lack, like constantly chasing. I've had that conversation with a couple of people in here. Nothing ever seems good enough. Like you're chasing a shiny object and you get it, and then what's next? You hit a revenue stream, what's next? And that's because there's nothing personal about it. And that's why we asked that question. What are you really doing it for? If you're just chasing it on a material thing, if you're chasing a number or something like a material thing, that's why it's never good enough, because it doesn't actually do anything for you when you hit it. So that's why we always need to look deeper. So you know what you need to do, but fear stops you doing it. So I want to show you the pattern. Fear and uncertainty leads to avoidance. So often when we avoid the inevitable, it's purely down to fear or being uncomfortable in the situation. So even when it's a tough conversation with a team member or client, like I said, it's the fear around what might happen after it is what puts you off. Like maybe legal implications or something like that we just had that conversation about. Or overthinking an obvious decision, even though it's staring you in the face. So like I said, picturing yourself from the outside looking in and going to yourself like, fuck me, I know what I need to do here. I know that that's the decision I need to make, but why the fuck am I not doing it? What's holding me back here? Why can I not make that decision? And it's only until you do it, then you go, I should have done this years ago. So Overthinking sometimes can feel like progress. And I'm going to, like, a scenario. Have you ever seen somebody and you look at their success and go, but fuck me, how's he doing that? Like, he's that kid. And he's flying. Absolutely flying. It's because they've got that fucking ignorant, we're going to do it anyway. They're not overthinking it. And maybe it's because they know less about what the implications could be. But that's why they have the balls to do it anyway, because they don't know what could go wrong. So they do it anyway. There's no fear there holding them back or stopping them from doing it. But we're overthinking sometimes feel like you're playing it safe. Oh, I need to be careful here. But it's just a sophisticated way of holding yourself back. Overthinking is just procrastination. Something you know you've been avoiding. And you know if you do it, you have to weigh up the pros and the cons as well. But overthinking, again, you're telling yourself you're being careful. It's not. So yeah, self-mastery is the difference between two things, essentially. We can sum it up. It's seeing the decision and actually executing the decision. That's what self-mastery is. And everyone in this room, can see their decisions. The winners are the ones who execute them, even when it's uncomfortable. So the best clients in here who do the best in here are the guys who put the blinkers on, go through the plan, ask questions, get answers, and just act on it. Or if you're toying around, well, why I don't know about this, why are we doing this, or what do you think this? The benefits of taking action, even if you're not entirely sure, far way up what could happen at the other end of it if things go wrong. But that's, the ones who ponder over everything, who second guess everything, who ask everybody's opinion. That's a pet hate of mine. Well, such and such said this and such said that. And like that old saying, everyone, opinions are like arseholes, everybody's got one. That's the truest saying in the world. And what happens is when you're asking everybody for an opinion on something, you're waiting until somebody says something that agrees with your narrative. So you're like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Yep, that's what I think. I'm going with that. We're all guilty of doing that because you just want somebody to agree with us. We're looking for somebody to be a nodding dog or a yes man. But those guys in your business, that's why, there's tough conversations that I'll have every person in here. I will never tell you what you want to hear, ever. And that's uncomfortable for both of us, but it needs to be said. If you're not going through the motions or if you come to me with an excuse or a reason, I'll call you out on it because, it needs to happen. And that's a higher level of guidance. If I just, yeah, okay, go ahead, yeah, no problem, no, fair enough. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But I can see what other people are doing on the outside, and I've been through most of it myself too. And again, we'll picture it back to that film where you're screaming at the screen going, you know both sides of the coin. It's two different scenes, two different people, and you know what's going to happen, and you're screaming at the TV screen, telling them to do what you need them to do, and you know what they should do. It's the same thing. Where is fear currently making your decisions for you? And again, even think about it outside of business. Don't just focus on business. This could be personal, completely personal. What decision you already know the answer to but haven't executed? So that could be having that conversation with somebody you know is a bad egg in the business. It could be whatever it may be, something health related, whatever, relationship related. And then the last one, I act with discipline. That's your statement. I act with discipline, avoid distractions, and manage my emotions well. 1, not at all. 5, you do it very well. So energy is the most practical one. Energy is your daily capacity to lead. So, but you operate on a finite, daily battery. As such, again, I always say you wake up with a certain capacity. And I wear this Whoop thing. Sometimes you can put your head away. Tells you your energy for the day and how well you've slept and whatever else. How you wake up, how much energy you've spent or what you've done over the weekend affects the following week. We've all been there, having a heavy weekend, then the whole following week's fucked. So energy is your daily capacity to lead. And I want to talk about something important here, which is burnout. Okay, so burnout is something that you don't see coming. Burnout will creep up and bite you in the ass. You can't even maybe put a finger on burnout. You don't even know when it's happening, but it's happening to you. So burnout is something, again, you need to have that level of awareness, be able to identify. But again, we need to avoid them. Even people who momentum is building or you're trying to push for something and you go, right, I'm all or nothing here. I'm going to go 7 days a week, all this month. But again, what happens then is the quality drops off, or then after that month, you're bollocksed, essentially. So what would be better is working to 80% capacity for 2 months, but pushing this here, we're 120%, burning through everything, working. And I just wanted to kind of make everybody aware that burnout is very, very real. Some of you have probably already felt it. Some of us have been through it and haven't even known. But, if you don't plan for the recovery, you will burn out. If you don't plan for downtime, if you don't plan for white space, if you don't take, a weekend, like at least a Sunday, to just reflect, to chill out, to do whatever, burnout is inevitable. I also want to just talk about something about energy. Like, energy is not motivation, and I'll touch on motivation as well. Motivation is a feeling, and it comes and goes. But energy is your actual capacity to think clearly, decide well, and then, like it says there, lead properly. And that's the thing that runs out. That's the thing that some of us only have a certain capacity to, and that's why I often say as well that the business can only go to the capacity personally that you can withhold. So you need to be looking at that when you're making decisions as well, is how does that impact me personally, my level of involvement, what that's going to do to your stress levels. You have to think of those things before making decisions, even though it's a big shiny number, or it might look good for other people on the outside. Another thing about your energy and how to protect your energy is doing things outside of your strengths. So if you're focusing on tasks that drain your time or energy, or you're dealing with clients or dealing with team who destroy your energy, that's important. Or you're doing certain types of work that you just don't enjoy, that will drain your battery faster than anything will. So it doesn't matter how good or how strong you are showing up. You know, everybody in here, we all either came from the tools or are on the tools, except for the admin or business support. But you think about it, when we've all been out on site and we can get through 12 hours of manual labour, and then you go into the office for 2 hours, you're falling asleep at the table because it's draining your energy, because it bores you to tears. So that's when we're talking about energy leaks. There's certain tasks that will drain your battery faster than others. There's certain people who you'll work with who'll drain your battery faster than others, certain clients or certain types of work. And that's why you'll often hear people say people drain the life out of them. That's a true thing. You know, people irritate you. That is real. And again, that level of awareness, you need to be aware of what drains your energy and what doesn't. So we need to look at where your energy is leaking. So it doesn't matter how well you sleep, or you could, you know, whatever raw food diets and you feel fantastic and you're brilliant, but the tasks you do during the day could drain that very quickly. And you'll often hear me talk about low value tasks, you know, like certain things like admin, where you're as a business owner, your time's better spent. No one else can do the things you can do. Like that founder work is stuff that nobody else in your business can do. You know, make decisions, big commercial decisions, or hiring and firing or other things. They're high value tasks that actually make massive impacts in the business. Admin, while it's absolutely crucial, it's the endless stuff. The stuff that if it wasn't there, your business wouldn't operate at all. But we need to look at that and see, is that something that's draining your energy completely? Chasing clients, so chasing quotes, chasing money, chasing invoices. You know, if that's draining your energy, if you turn up, you know, full of beans, and next thing, that's you find yourself doing all the time, that's having a massive impact and it's draining you more than everything else. Probably financial stress is probably the biggest and quickest drain of anybody's energy, is financial stress. If you had all the money in the world, nothing really else you wouldn't really give too much of a shit about, you know, or it'll affect you less. But financial stress is probably one of the biggest ones. Context switching is another one, and this is one that's really difficult in the construction industry. When you're constantly chopping and changing and being all the roles in the business at once. So managing the project, pricing the work, working on the tools, dealing with the lads, dealing with the clients. If you're constantly switching context from task to task, flipping between site, office, quotes, phone, that will drain you massively. So this is, again, business and personal. So we're not just talking about business here. There's things outside of the business that are draining your energy too. Like I said, the stuff you get up to at the weekend, the relationship, and the big one, like bringing stress from home into the business and vice versa. It flows both ways. And we'll bring it to the founder and operator stuff. The operator day is loud, it's reactive, and it leaks energy everywhere. And the founder's day is quieter, more deliberate, and it protects your energy for the few decisions that actually move things along. So when you're in that operator mode, it will drain you quicker than anything ever will. In the founder mode, while it can feel quiet and less impactful, that's the stuff that's going to drive you forward. That's the stuff that's going to bring you, energy. So the question isn't, how do I get more motivated, or how do I get myself up in the morning to do this? The question is, where is your energy actually leaking? What's draining you? What do you need to stop doing? What do you need to delegate? Or what do you need to protect? So you've actually got capacity left to do the things you actually need to do in life. So the last one there then, pillar 3, energy. Where are your biggest energy leaks right now? Admin, chasing clients, chasing money, scattered selling. Scattered selling just means like trying to deal with so many different projects. Trying to do too much, business has too many facets to it. Context switching, personal chaos outside of the business. What work are you doing outside of your strengths is collapsing your best output? What's the one thing that you would stop, delegate, or protect? So stop or delegate is like the admin stuff or anything else, or managing sites or dealing with clients. What you need to protect is like the founder time or your own health, like getting to the gym, doing whatever you need to do that actually boosts your energy, that brings you forward. And then the statement at the end, I have the focus, health, and time to execute it at a high level, and then score it from 1 to 5. And we'll just take a few minutes to do that. If you're still writing, work away. I'm just going to talk for a while, so just, if you're still jotting stuff down, work away. But now you've scored all 3 of your metrics. Vision, self-mastery, energy. you've got three honest, numbers in front of you where you've scored it at the bottom, and some of them are, probably aren't very good. Let's be honest, right? And that's exactly where the work is, in that honesty. Because something I've learned is that, more than any individual pillar, the breakthrough is in the embarrassment. It's when you're, able to, or this thing that you're reluctant to admit, that you're the cause of the problem, or that's why things are going wrong. And I think Ryan, I actually had the conversation with you on the call, and you said you're quite prepared to admit that you're the problem. And you said, or maybe I am the problem, and I said, no, you definitely are. Because that's the case for everybody in here. Whatever's going wrong, whatever's going right, it's because of you. Something you could do differently would affect all of it. And that's because, it stops and ends with you. And I touched on that at the beginning about, you're the captain of the ship and blah, blah, blah. But it's easy, like I said a few slides ago, it's easy to blame the market. It's easy, to blame the economy or a client. But there's always something. Like if you told me 10 reasons why you couldn't do something, I'd probably give you 11 or 12 reasons why you could have, or what you could have done differently. So it's harder to look at yourself, and that's why we do it. It's harder to look at yourself and admit that the person running the business needs to change something. And that's why this work can be difficult, and that's why it's uncomfortable. And that slightly embarrassing bit of honesty, that's where the breakthrough happens. So whatever came up for you in the last while there in those workbooks that made you uncomfortable, that's not the problem to bury. That's not something to shy away from. That's what you need to lean into. So we're going to talk about, again, fix the founder. We're just going to bring it all together on that last page. And I really want you to try and do this as deeply as possible, right? Not just surface level stuff, but these is kind of summarizing that whole section. Founder operating system is obviously the growth driver number one, because it starts and ends with you, okay? The vision gives you the direction, self-mastery enables you to execute, and the energy gives you the capacity to do it all. And we spoke about that law of if the founder's off, then everything else is off: the business, the personal life, everything else. So I want you to look at that last section, the 3 strengths, 3 challenges, and the immediate fixes or next moves. And I really want you to try your best to get everything filled in here. And if you can't get 5 next moves, fine. But at least if you can get those first 6 points, top 3 strengths, top 3 challenges, then we can have a discussion on what the next move needs to be if you're not clear on it.